today is the 9th week, and I have outlined behind me the basic outlines for today and next week, just so that you know where we are going and how the course will end. Seems like it may never end. And also today, after the break, we'll go around the room and hear the summary of the presentations that you made earlier. That way we will have a good review of what we have done so far. Okay, so today we're going to start with methodological issues, and next week also we'll start with methodological issues because there will be some leftovers. There always are leftover issues. And then go on to women's rights and discuss something that we might call subaltern voices. Does anybody here know about subaltern history? You may not know the name, but what Zin does, for example, is subaltern history. That is hearing the voices from below. A lot of Zin sources actually come from people in everyday life, people in struggle that other historians do not pay much attention to. So here we will try to pay some attention to subaltern voices, but I want to do it in a different way. We want to combine actually logic, epistemology, ontology, ethics, but in the form of aesthetics. And so we will discuss especially the capabilities and character of this one particular woman, one of Tagore's dance dramas, from which I will show you a short excerpt that might help for us to have a better discussion. In the process, I think we'll have to have some discussion about both dance in general and Indian dance in particular. And then we will go to sustainable society and human rights. And there are 10 principles that this book, Alternatives to Economic Globalization by John Kavanagh and Jerry Mander. Has anybody seen this book? It's really a good book. It's a very good book. So I will go over their 10 principles and what these principles briefly mean. And then if we have time, I will discuss a little more in detail and depth some work that I and some others have done on the connection between ecology, inequality, and poverty on the one hand, and between these and human rights on the other. And that probably will not leave much more time today. You will also hear what you have to say. And then next week, we will wrap up by looking at some more methodological issues, because they are truly important. And then discuss systems of political economy and human rights. After all, this course is about political economy or human rights. And in that, we will discuss both, we will start with classical political economy and variants within the classical political economy. People like Hume and Adam Smith and Ricardo, and then Marx's take on this, from which Ellen Wood basically proceeds and does her book on the Empire of Capital. Then neoclassical approach, which is related to neoliberalism, and then postmodern approach, which is partly my approach, which definitely builds upon many of these themes and issues and approaches, but also is critical of some of the absolutist stances that all these approaches tend to take, because they are all, in a sense, children of enlightenment, and enlightenment, now we understand, was far from being truly enlightened. It was at least partly full of hubris. And then, going in that vein, we will focus on the deepening of the links between human rights and social capabilities once again. And this will be more concrete and contextual. And then we will have cosmopolitan democracy and what kind of problems it presents, but what kind of prospects as well. And then discuss the problems of economic policy making, and finally, democratic internationalism, globalization, and human rights. We will also have Peggy Cole, I think I mentioned before, did I? She's a councilwoman for the city of Littleton, and she has she is somebody who definitely swims against the stream, and with very innovative ideas, she managed to get herself elected And now she's pushing for those ideas which are basically geared towards deepening local democracy. So there is that slogan, think globally, act locally. This way we can actually finish with the satisfaction that acting locally and thinking globally are both possible. Okay, any questions about today or the rest of the course or anything before today? Yeah.
Okay, so both papers are due next week, or one's due next week and one's due during?
One is due next week, the question, the shorter one, and the paper itself will be due on Monday the 17th. Is it the 17th? Yes, it is. The 17th of November.
And then our reading reflections are due today.
They are due today.
Okay.
Yeah, after you give me a brief summary and what you got out of this. Other questions? Okay, let me start then on methodological issues. Methodology indeed is very important. It's more important than I can actually explain, which is a liability, certainly. You only learn how important methodology is as you try to answer real questions. Because once you start answering questions such as whether a certain government policy enhances women's rights, you have to ask yourself, well, how do I really know, the answer to this question? You want to find the answer, but unless you have an approach that you can define, you will not know how to proceed, first of all, and then when you have proceeded, what to do, and at the end of this, how to interpret what you do. So all these are deep methodological issues. And they require starting with logic of certain sort, and the logic book that you read, it's short, but it's actually quite deep, because it presents both ordinary logic and the problems of the ordinary logic, the deductive and the inductive logic, but also another form of logic where you have contradictions that necessarily do not invalidate an argument. This is called para-consistent logic. That is in chapter 5 of the logic book. But the last few chapters of logic book are especially important because they present a kind of statistical decision theory in a very illuminating way. How we actually can have more confidence in some kind of inductive generalization. And a lot of the statements that people make at best are inductive generalizations. So how much confidence we pay, we actually end up having on these statements will depend very clearly on how much we know about inductive logic and reliability from inductive logic. Now, epistemology asks the basic question, how do we know what we know, and how do we know what we know is true? In some ways, the two statements could almost be equivalent. But knowing that something is does not definitely always imply that it is true. And we have many different theories of truth, so it can get a little confusing. The approach that I have been comfortable with and I have tried to argue for, in contrast with other approaches, is the scientific realist approach when you are following scientific methodology, scientific approach, and also interpretive approaches that are definitely applicable, where you cannot measure things, where you cannot formulate hypotheses in the usual scientific manner and carry out tests. So both are valid, in my mind. But both actually rely on ontology, which is what is real. And it is very important to settle the question one way or another, at least provisionally, because there are people who believe that nothing is real, right? And they may be right. One way to address the issue without skirting what these people are saying is to work on the phenomenological level, to say that we have this phenomenal world and we see various connections, but there must be deeper causal connections as well, and we may be able to sort them out. And that was the point of the causal depth paper, that some causes are deeper than other causes. Some causes are hidden, some causes are apparent. Sometimes the hidden causes are actually much deeper than the apparent causes, apparent connections that you can observe. So behind the observable world, there is a causal world with with a causal structure. And that is the ontological view of scientific realism, that there are real entities with causal connections. And when there are causal connections among them and certain things happen in the world, we experience certain things, certain phenomena. So phenomena actually arise out of a deeper structure of reality. And for human rights issues, this is very important because if everything is relative and everything is the same as everything else, then you cannot really make any definite statements about human rights. On the other hand, if you believe that there are firm universal stuff, whether they come from Judeo-Christian tradition or Islamic tradition or Hindu tradition or our so-called modern tradition, then perhaps you are being quite arrogant and full of hubris. Because how do we really know that what we are claiming to be universal is really universal for all places and all times? It seems like a really big statement to make. So we are trying to follow a kind of middle road, one might say, very cautiously, where we do not say that everything is relative. We do not say that we can with confidence claim universality for many things either. There are some things that we probably can claim universality for, that human beings are mortal. It's certainly, unless we at some point get beyond mortality, it's probably a universal statement for the moment. But even laws of physics are not universal for all time, because right after the Big Bang, there was a time when we didn't have the physical laws that we have today, and who knows what physical laws we'll have, many, many billions of years from today in the universe. We really cannot know for sure. Okay, ethics. Why is ethics important? Well, we covered a lot of ground on ethics. We talked about deontological ethics. We talked about consequentialist logic, where we judge the goodness or badness of an action by the consequences of the action. And in deontology, we judge the goodness or badness of an action by what principles it conforms to. Principle of right. Human rights is almost obviously a candidate for deontological analysis, but that is not always a very useful thing to do, because you may have consequences of rights that are very important to take into account. This is the position of Sen. Sen actually starts with principles, but then also asserts, correctly I think, that consequences of acts are also important, although he would go on to argue that the utilitarian approach to consequences is too narrow. So Sen is a critique of utilitarianism on the one hand, but a supporter of the broader philosophy of consequentialism in general. And capabilities can be seen as a variety of consequentialist argument, and that is one relevant aspect of ethics. The second relevant aspect of ethics for this course is from the feminist angles. And as you know now, there is actually not just one kind of feminism. There are many different kinds of feminism, and even in feminist ethics, there are many, many different approaches. Men have not paid much attention to these things. Academic philosophy, including ethics largely, has been the domain of men. And women started challenging these assumptions and practices starting in 1970s in this country, in Europe, and in other places as well. But unknown to Western feminists, there have been feminists in South Asia and Japan and China who have challenged many of these assumptions in the early 20th century. That history, I think, is yet to be written in English or other Western languages. It's very unfortunate that I could not find any readings in English for you for those things. But if anybody is interested, I'd be very happy to discuss those things with you, although we don't have much time in this course. Okay. Now aesthetics. We have not talked about aesthetics so far, but aesthetics is really important, although like all the subjects, it has also been very kind of male-dominated because beauty has also been somehow the province of men in all these patriarchal societies. especially feminine beauty. Women are perceived through men's eyes, and also they themselves perceive themselves through men's eyes. And that becomes quite often a liability. Simone de Beauvoir, I think, is the one who discusses this most incisively. And since then others, of course, have taken up the scene and taken up the theme, and they have discussed it. Luz Irigaray, who has her own kind of feminist approach, actually deconstructs the whole thing and turns it inside out, upside down, and valorizes the female more than the male, and starting with the female body. So she's a very interesting writer, I think. I think the survey article discussed only a little bit of her ideas. And she also writes very, very beautifully. Most of the French feminists actually write much better than English language feminists. I don't know why that happened. Does anybody have any guesses? Is French writing intrinsically better than English? That's not true, because I read in both languages, and there's some horrible French writing too, by men usually. So maybe it's a gender thing after all. Okay, so what about aesthetics? Aesthetics is fundamentally about beauty, right? And one can debate and discuss till one turns blue in the face, and all the beauty goes out of the conversation in the process. It's certainly possible. Henri Bergson once was discussing laughter. Here I read the French word for laughter. It's a really nice essay, and somebody came to Tagore's University and gave a lecture on Bergson's idea of laugh. And that was so turgid, so dense, so hard to follow, and so soporific, sleep-inducing stuff, that at the end Tagore himself said privately that, well, we heard so much about laughter that we are ready to cry. So the same thing can happen about beauty. I think it's better just to experience beauty rather than to talk about it in a class like this. But one has to deconstruct the idea of beauty, because it has been constructed in patriarchal class societies. So I think we can talk about women's rights from all these different perspectives and bringing them together. And we have been introduced to social capabilities. And I have talked a bit about how we can take an interpretive approach along with the scientific approach of measurement of capabilities and human development, etc., correcting it for gender bias, which people are doing, and which certainly is going to be worthwhile to do. Many of you, I know, are writing papers on related themes and topics. But I want to spend a little more time today on aesthetics and Tagore in particular, and illustrate one particular instance of subaltern voices, voices from below, from Indian kind of repertoire of Buddhist stories. The other day I mentioned Radha, I mentioned Shama. They are both interesting women. This particular dance drama is called Chandalika. And Chandalika she's the daughter of a Chandal. Chandal is a person of the lowest caste, untouchable in India. You know, they do all kinds of work that nobody else wants to do, and they're forced to do it. And I think it is really important that we understand how symbolically one can turn these things around, which is what Tagore did way before the word deconstruction was coined. Deconstruction was coined by Heidegger in 1920s, and Tagore certainly hadn't read Heidegger, and then it became popular in the 70s and 80s and 90s in Europe and then in America. But what you do in deconstruction, one of the strategies is to question and reverse the terms of opposition. And here, in this story, which is from Jataka, I think, you see in the first scene, you have these village women, girls playing, and different merchants, come with their wares. First comes this milkman, selling sweets, and then comes this man with jewelry to sell. And in each case, all the girls are excited, and so is this woman, who has a name actually, although she belongs to this caste, and plays the dance drama is named after her, after the caste. Her name is Prakriti, which actually means nature. And whenever she is interested in anything and reaches for it, everybody says that no, she's untouchable, so you should not really have anything to do with her, and all these people leave. And then she gets really quite disgusted, and she says, why should I worship a god, who has made me in particular for this? And she talks to her mother. The mother, of course, is used to these things. She has accepted a lifetime of humiliation, so she doesn't question it. And then the mother basically scolds her and tells her to go and get some water, for household chores. So she goes to get water, and then a Buddhist monk comes and asks for water. He's thirsty. And she says, no, I cannot give you water because I belong to the untouchable caste. And he says that I am a human being and you too are a human being. So, and I'm thirsty, so please give me some water. And so finally, very reluctantly, he extends his hand like this, and she pours some water, and he drinks it, and then he says that may you be blessed, Kollan Huktabu, Kollani. And it's very interesting. Of course, you don't know the language, but Tagore uses more Sanskritified version of Bengali for the monks and people who are in upper classes, so to speak, and very colloquial language for these lower class people, which is quite realistic. And he manages to actually create dance forms that are also very different for different purposes. Especially in this drama, he uses a lot of folk phrasing and idioms. How many of you know about dance? You have studied some dance, yeah. Okay, so here, dance basically has to do with these four things. It has to do with space, it has to do with shape, that our bodies, we create shape with our individual bodies or with bodies in collection, both are important. Of course, we need a lot of energy. My dance teachers always told me that the energy comes from solar plexus, and you have to be very aware of your solar plexus when you dance. And time, of course, time both in terms of rhythm, which is very important in any dancing, especially Indian type of dancing. Then you have to combine all these things, and through a coordination of phrases and bodies, and using the space that you have to create something. Now these dances are in some sense simple because they are telling a story. A lot of modern dance is abstract. Merce Cunningham, who is still alive actually in New York, he's in his 80s and he's still teaching dancing. Back when I used to know John Cage, when I dropped out and spent some time in New York, but I used to go there all the time, even before and after. I got to be really very close to John Cage. Next time I'll bring the poem that I wrote when he passed away in 1992. And John Cage and Merce Cunningham were very, very close. John Cage created this avant-garde music, and Merce Cunningham created this very avant-garde dancing. And his dancing was very abstract always, but it was really wonderful, full of imagination. And when I Ching came out, they both told me in 1950s, they were very excited because they discovered chants and how to capitalize on chants and make it an integral part of their musical phrasing and presentation. Anyway, that's another kind of dance. But in Tagore, you can also see, if you know enough about the sources of his dance, that he innovated a great deal within that. And he never let anything that happened by chance go to waste. Although he had no well-developed theory about these things, but his intuitions, I think, were very, very sharp. Yes. Okay, without further ado, since I've told you the story, now be able to see it. Can somebody hit the switch? The sound is not working properly. I don't know why. That is her mother. Now, mother is rebuking her.